how can we enable this solo dev or this small game team to create the next Fortnite, to create this massive sensation on the IC and attract millions of players. A game developer can literally download the template and have months of a head start on building their game. By leveraging the Boom DAO infrastructure and the tools that we've built, we've managed to take all these things that would probably take you a year to build from scratch, and you can configure everything in an hour.
Welcome back to Blockchain Pill. My name is Alex, and today we talk to Tommy from Boom DAO. It's really nice to have you here, Tommy. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for taking your time to make it to the podcast. Welcome, and how's it going?
It's going great. It's great to be on the podcast. I've watched you guys for a long time now, and you guys have the best podcast, I believe, on the IC.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, Tommy, you and ICP Maximalist have been around the internet computer for quite some time now. I remember when we first started our NFT collection, you two were already established here. So how did your journey start? Like, how did you find out about the internet computer so early?
Yeah. So the ICP Maximus and I actually met online on Twitter about 2.5 years ago. Actually, like we started working together, and it wasn't until a few months later, or actually I think it was 6 months later, that we actually finally met in real life. And that was when we started going full time and building on the IC.
My question for you as a developer is, why would a developer come and build your project on the internet computer? Like, what are some of the main benefits of building here?
The internet computer definitely I'd say it has many benefits, but for game development specifically, the number one benefit is that you can host all of your logic and data on chain. More important than how fast transaction speeds are and things like data storage. But I would say like the number one thing is that when you build a game on the internet computer, since everything can be run from smart contracts, this enables new capabilities such as SNS DAOs that govern all the smart contracts of a game, as well as composability, transparency, people being able to edit the smart contracts of your game in a permissionless way. All these things are enabled that aren't possible on other blockchains.
So there is a big advantage of being able to host everything on chain.
Exactly. And a huge part of that too is that the internet computer has such cheap data storage costs, so that enables storing. I believe it's 1 GB for $5 a year, which can't be compared with any other blockchain. On any other blockchain, it's millions of dollars a year. So this enables storing all of games, all of a game's state and all of a game's logic directly on the blockchain.
I read somewhere that compared to Ethereum, it is like millions of times cheaper to host everything on the internet computer compared to Ethereum, which is crazy. Like there was like this crazy number.
Yeah, it's something like a magnitude of like 1,000 difference. Like it's insane. You would never host a fully on-chain app on Ethereum or Solana or any of these other L1 chains.
Please tell me, what have you worked on before starting developing Boom DAO and previously Phethora? Because you and ICP Maximalist have worked on Phethora before starting this project.
Previously, I worked at Disney and Scopely. I worked on a turn-based RPG game for the Marvel franchise. It was for Marvel Avengers, and that game I think generated about $1 billion in revenue over its lifetime. And then after that, I worked on a Forex strategy game for James Cameron's Avatar movie. It was actually for the Avatar 2 movie that came out recently, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. When we were working on the game, we weren't sure if the movie was going to be a hit or a flop, but I think it turned out pretty well.
Wow, it's incredible. So are you allowed to say those big names in here, or?
Yeah.
I assume you are.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Yeah, of course. So I think the question that everybody has right now is, what is it that Boom DAO aims to do? So what's the plan for Boom DAO?
Really, with the Boom DAO mission, it's to build the gaming infrastructure on the IC for fully on-chain games. And it's also to create this collaborative hub to gather all the game developers and gaming enthusiasts in one place. And so the issue that we saw with the IC is that building a fully on-chain game is an extremely, extremely hard task. And it requires, a team of really experienced game developers who have built full-scale MMO online games in the past and have, deep expertise in server systems, in scalable games, and low latency online games. So being able to gather a group of people with this type of expertise and basically train them in the internet computer and in blockchain and transferring their knowledge over to basically building a scalable, back-end server system that's written entirely in smart contracts. So that's mainly the issue that Boom DAO has set out to solve in the short term. In the long term, really, Boom DAO is about infrastructure, gaming infrastructure. So this is just one piece of infrastructure, but there's many other pieces, that will be required in the future to build gaming products on the IC.
Right. So instead of every game team having to have the knowledge to build it themselves, you guys assembled a star team that does it and then helps everybody else do it, is what I'm understanding.
Exactly. Yep. So, because we realized a lot of game teams on the IC were building the same things. And some of them were more experienced than others. Some of them had different expertise than others. But what was bad about it is that we were basically working months to build things separately when we could have worked together to build them much quicker. And then we could have all shared them and gained network effects from sharing these same infrastructures. So it's basically, how do we incentivize everyone to work together and share the same goals, because we all have the same problems that we're trying to solve.
With a big part of the internet computer being NFTs and upcoming games, I think this is a very good thing to do, and it will help speed up the process for most of this sector of the ecosystem, which I think it's a very good thing. So you mentioned that you guys have developed and open sourced some tools. Can we go through them and you explain them in a as non-developer friendly way for us to understand?
Yes, so I'm going to try to take off my developer hat and speak in normal language, and hopefully everyone out there can understand. Boom DAO has created many different products, and these products span a wide range of basically the tech stack that's required to build a fully on-chain game. And so if you want to dive deeper into each of these products and why they exist, I definitely recommend that you guys go and watch the global R&D video that we presented at the DFINITY in July, and you can skip ahead to the Boom DAO presentation, and that'll dive deep into each of these tools and why they exist. But I'm just going to go briefly over them today, and basically the two tools that are core to Boom DAO are the Boom DAO game launcher and the World Engine protocol. And I'll talk first about the Boom DAO game launcher. If you go to the game launcher website, you'll see that there's a bunch of games showcased on this website. And basically, these games are the game clients being uploaded to a Canister. And what that means is that basically what the game that you see and interact with, the graphics and the player running around, none of that is actually going through any blockchain consensus. That's basically just running on your local computer or on your browser. So that's why it's called the game client. It's cool because we can host these games on asset canisters, but there's actually no blockchain consensus happening, and there's no game economy within these games. What we wanted to do with the game launcher is that we wanted to make it super, super simple for a game developer to come to the IC and immediately upload their game to a Canister. So if you go to the Upload Games tab, you'll see that you can literally click a button and drag and drop game files, and immediately within one click, you have your game client uploaded to a Canister. And in the past, you had to download DFX, set up a Cycles wallet, do a bunch of configuration of your Canister just to get your game client uploaded. And so this basically reduces all that work into one step. You'll also see we have a tab for deploying NFTs. And this was basically, something that we heard a lot from game developers is they, spent a lot of time, even months, basically setting up their NFT collections and configuring them and minting and doing all this work to have NFTs in their game. And so we made it super easy. You can literally click a button and create an NFT collection. And then you can manage your NFT collection by, creating images and configuring them, minting NFTs. You can do airdrops to, the holders of any NFT collection. And you can even burn NFTs. So basically all the things that you need to have an NFT collection deeply integrated into your game are all provided from this tooling.
When you mention NFTs, you don't only mentions like a PFP collection, so it could also be like resources or items in game. You can also create those with the tool.
Exactly. Actually, that's the main use case, is that we want people to be, more experimentative and innovative with their NFT collections. So it's not just about creating, PFP collections. It's about, exploring could everything in your game be an NFT? Or could all the items, could the gold and the sword that you pick up on the ground, could those things be NFTs? And so basically these tools allow you to configure, all the items or things in your games that you want to be NFTs and the images and all of that, and then people can or the dev can then have players mint those NFTs directly from in-game. So like when you go to pick up an item in-game, on the back end, it's minting the NFT using this game launcher infrastructure.
So for example, you can find in a game, like you find a sword and then 3 essences, let's say, and you want to upgrade the sword and make it like epic or legendary quality. You mint a new one and burn the old one and you receive the better one. So this is a very
Exactly.
important. It is so cool. It is so cool because we were wondering
And
how we would do that. Yeah, crazy.
yeah, and what's amazing about it is that this is all handled by the infrastructure that Boom DAO has built. And what you described, where you burn an NFT and mint a new NFT that's, an upgraded sword, let's say, can all be configured inside of the Boom DAO infrastructure in like 5 minutes.
So cool. Super cool.
Whereas in the
Yeah.
past, it would have taken months to build, the back end for this kind of a complicated, transaction. The last tab is the deploy tokens tab, and that's basically uh, the same as NFTs, but for ICRC tokens. So, we want people to experiment and try out new ways to integrate tokens into their game. And so you can create a token in one click. You can do airdrops. You can have tokens minted in your game. You can use tokens as payments in your game for items or to unlock content. Anything that you want can be done using these tokens. And so this is really for these tools are basically the tools that game developers on the IC have needed and have spent months, building separately. And we basically, wanted to build these so that game developers don't have to worry about this. They can basically just focus on building a fun game and just use these tools to do all the blockchain stuff, in a matter of hours.
Having those tools will make it easier for new developers to come here and build their vision on the internet computer.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's the number one feedback that we heard is that it's if you've ever built a game, it's already one of the hardest things to do. Like in the field of software engineering, game development is one of the most complex fields. And when you add blockchain on top of that, it now becomes like a near impossible task, right? To build a game that's also fully on chain. So we wanted to make it, much easier, and that way the game developer can just focus on the game. That's kind of an overview of the game launcher. And I want to dive deeper into our next product, which actually our next product I am much more excited about. It's what I think has, the potential to really, really change how games are developed and basically like the whole, gaming industry. And that's the World Engine Protocol. And so the World Engine Protocol was basically created, after months of R&D and trying to figure out how do we build a game server fully on chain. And so if when you have an online game, you have your game client, which is the game that you're playing, the thing that you download and install on your computer, and has the cool graphics and all that. But actually, that's only 50% of the game. The other 50% is hosted, on servers that are basically, regulating your game. They're storing your data in the database. They're making sure you don't cheat. They're validating every move that you make in the game to make sure that it's a valid action. Uh, all this stuff that's happening behind the scenes. It also handles things like matchmaking. If you're playing like a game like League of Legends or Call of Duty, they're handling, connecting you with other players and simulating those players' positions and animations in your game. Things. So it's a very complicated tech stack, and actually it can be much more complicated than the game client itself. And so what we've seen is that in Web3 in general, I could name maybe a handful of games that have their game server on chain. And the reason for this is that, running basically if you run a game server on chain, it needs to be a smart contract. So in the case of ICP, it would be a canister. And basically the complexity of building a game server, as a smart contract is too much for game developers, and so they basically give up. And so most game servers, like 99% of game servers, are still hosted on AWS. And so for that reason, we set out to figure out how can we build a game server protocol fully on chain that other game developers can leverage permissionlessly as much as they want, and how can we build it in a way that the more developers who build their games on this protocol, the more network effects grow, and it creates basically positive network effects for everyone who's connected to the protocol. And so the World Engine Protocol was born, and basically what it does is store all the data of every game, on ICP inside of one database. And this database, consists of thousands and thousands of canisters. Basically every user who connects to the protocol creates, their own user canister. And basically by connecting all of these games to one single protocol, we're able to create, composability and interoperability between all the games that are using it.
What do you mean by interoperability? So would I be able to use an item from, let's say, Pause Arena in a game like AMOLAD?
This is a deep topic, and there's a lot of confusion. So with there's two types of interoperability. There's interoperability of the client, which are things like the graphics, like what you see, like the 3D models and things like that. And then there's interoperability of the data, the back end. And so that's things like your user data, right? If you have this item in this game, that's being stored on the back end, how does another game know that you have that item? And how do you have two games communicate to each other on the back end if they want to, transact items? So these are kind of the questions that every game that's claiming interoperability is trying to solve. And so basically with what the World Engine Protocol is that it's trying to solve the issue of games being able to communicate to each other basically at the lowest level, at the database layer. So if games want to know, like I'll give a concrete example. Let's say I do a quest in Plethora, and I want to get an achievement in IMOLAD for doing that quest. You couldn't do that before because Phethora might use AWS and Mongo database, and IMOLAD might use MySQL and Google Cloud. So like completely different tech stacks. Those tech stacks couldn't communicate, and why would they? Like no one wants to, like game development, the game industry. It's extremely tribal, divisive. Like people don't want to work together. So why would they even try to do something like this? Whereas with the World Engine Protocol, since everything is written with certain data standards in a similar way that NFTs established a data standard for digital objects, basically the World Engine Protocol establishes a data standard for video games. And so basically different games that connect to the World Engine Protocol can basically transfer data across their games in a way that's built in from the beginning. But I want to take a step back because I think what the World Engine Protocol enables isn't really like one use case. It basically is kind of like it opens up this realm of possibilities for people to innovate and experiment with. So another example of a use case could be if I build a game that's built to be open and encourage people to create content in that game. Let's say like a Minecraft kind of game where people are coming in and creating their own worlds, right, inside of this Minecraft type of game. What the World Engine enables is that since the game is written, entirely in smart contracts and connected to the World Engine, people can basically come in and build on top of the game permissionlessly. And so, like all the data that is being stored in this database can be read and then extended by any game developer. So if I wanted to come to this Minecraft type of game and build a dex for all the items in the game, I could do that. If I wanted to come and create a government on top of this game, I could do that. If I wanted to create a meta game, like let's say I wanted to create this this like League of Legends mini game inside of this Minecraft game. I could come and create that permissionlessly because all the user data is basically open and permissionless to use. So by having it basically be fully in smart contracts, it allows everything to be composable and extendable in new ways.
Okay, I understand. So it allows games to communicate with one another, and it allows people to be able to leverage this communication between games to build on top of the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So you can almost think of it as uh, by default, since you're building on smart contracts, by default, everything is open, transparent, and composable. And so from the beginning, these games can be built on top of and extended.
It would have to change the whole idea of games, because you said it's usually they're tribalistic and nobody wants to communicate and share anything with anyone else. So this would become more of a joint project for everybody involved.
Exactly. Yep. And something I think that's important to note for people who might not be like familiar with video games, most or a majority of video games are actually mods of other games. So, you know, people see a game and they love it and they want to extend it, and so they create what's called a mod. And a mod is basically when you modify a game to be a game that you want it to be. And so examples of this are Fortnite, which was a mod of PUBG, which was a mod of another game. League of Legends, which was a mod of Dota, which was a mod of a Worldcraft, or Dota is a mod of a World of Warcraft mod. And so, and Counter-Strike is another example. Counter-Strike was a mod of another first-person shooter, which was a mod of another first-person shooter. So these games basically had different iterations where people, developers, really enjoyed the game that they're playing, modified it, released another version of it, and people, you know, like that version better, and then they modified it again. So basically, like the ability for people to take, you know, this beautiful creative work that a person has created and, you know, extend it, build on top of it, uh, is what enables, you know, these massive games that we see today. And what's amazing about the building it fully on chain is that now, you know, all these mods can basically be tracked back to one, you know, original smart contract, and all these smart contracts are basically being built on top of the original smart contract. And so it creates this really cool, you know, world where anyone can extend, you know, any game in the world, and games can talk to each other in ways that weren't possible before.
I think it really hit it home. The example with Dota built on top of Warcraft 3, I believe, and then it became this whole thing we see now with League of Legends, with esports, so many teams around it, and such big prizes and big streamers. It's incredible how building on top of another game can have such a butterfly effect where we get those huge games. Yeah, so encouraging this is definitely lucrative. So you mentioned World Engine and Game Launcher. Those are the two main tools. Can we go over the remaining tools, like briefly explain them to our listeners?
So some of the other tools that Boom DAO has built include the Unity template, which was basically created to solve this issue where uh, you know, everyone on the IC wants to build a really awesome game with amazing graphics, really immersive, because that's what gets players excited. It's what gets the marketing going. You know, it gets what people excited about the ecosystem, and you know it's a big part of a fun game, right? Is having amazing graphics, and so you need to build with something like Unity or Unreal Engine, and that engine needs to communicate to the internet computer. And so a huge blocker for game developers for the last 2 years on the IC is that there was no way for Unity to directly communicate to canisters on the IC. And so 2 years ago, I basically, you know, did a lot of hacking and figured out a way to communicate to this basically like browser JavaScript, and then browser JavaScript communicated to canisters. You don't need to know about all that, but basically, you know, I figured out a hack for getting around this issue, and all the game developers on the IC are still using this hack to write their code, but it's not something that's production level. It's not something that's scalable, and it creates a lot of bottlenecks when you're writing your code. And so basically, what we wanted to do was make it so that you could write directly, Unity C# code that could call canisters. And we're really excited because we've created an ICP.NET agent that was created by Ethan, known as Gektek. And this agent allows you to communicate from Unity directly to canisters. And so what we did was we took this agent, fully integrated it into a Unity project that we built as a template, and we included features like minting NFTs, minting, burning, payments for ICRC, a white label NFT marketplace that allows players to buy and sell and list NFTs inside of your game, a white label shop that allows players to come in and purchase NFTs with ICRC tokens, purchase in-game items with ICP, CKBTC, like all these different things that a game developer might need to build a game are fully integrated into this template. So a game developer can literally download the template and have months of a head start on building their game. And that's basically the goal of this Unity template. And then finally, I kind of talked a little bit about it, but the ICP.NET agent is the tool that we built to allow the C# in Unity to directly talk to canisters.
So the two main things are the game launcher and world engine. I have one issue with this, and the only issue is, why did you guys not launch this earlier? I think that is the biggest problem. Yeah, no, it's incredible. So for example, Amolad right now is like everything. I talk to them, and everything in their game is NFTs, and I can only think about how much work they had to put it into their game without those tools. And why didn't you guys do this earlier? Is my question.
Yeah, and that's a great question. The reason why is that it was a monumental task. Like, these are non-trivial problems that we're trying to solve. The ICP.NET agent was probably the hardest thing to solve. Building a library that allows you to leverage cryptography in C# to sign messages and send them to canisters is not a trivial thing to write. Basically, Ethan had to work directly with DFINITY cryptographers to figure out how to write, these cryptographic signatures in C# and be able to sign them. So it's very tedious and complex infrastructure that had to be built. And then also, we didn't want to release something that was unfinished. So we spent months testing everything, finding all the bugs. We had to integrate all the features that we knew game developers needed, things like NFTs, ICRC tokens, marketplaces. We wanted to make sure everything was working correctly. And that's why if you go to the Unity template today, that you can literally click on a link and load it up, and everything works just right out the box. And if we released months ago, there could have been bugs. There's all these things that were going wrong, and so we hope that now we have a fully finished product that everyone can leverage.
Absolutely. I want us to go a step back and talk a little bit about your experience with Phethora and building Phethora, and what did you learn during your time with Phethora that you expanded into Boom DAO?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It actually naturally happened because of all the issues that we were running into with Phethora. So with Phethora, it was basically working on, we wanted to build a fun game, right? That was what we set out to do, a fun, fully on-chain game. And that was our main focus. And during the process, we realized, oh, wow, like, building everything on-chain is a huge task, right? And so originally, if you played Phethora, you know that it's a pretty complex game because you have things like online matchmaking, you have things like server authoritative movement, and so it is a game that required very low latency, meaning the ping needed to be under 100 milliseconds, because you're basically playing with 20 other players on this map. And so in the process of building it, we decided that we couldn't build a lot of the game on chain. About, I would say, 6 months in or 3 months in, we started building some off-chain components on AWS for the real-time server and for horizontally scaling all these servers. Things like geographically locating servers. We had servers in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, multiple parts in Asia, Australia. And it's basically because when you play a game, like let's say you're playing Call of Duty or League of Legends, they have servers in every major city in the world. So when you play League of Legends and you're located, in a suburb of New York, you're connecting to the New York server. And they do this because the number one thing that affects ping in a game is how close you are to the server that's nearest to you. And so with the IC, it's a different ball game because there's nodes across the entire world. They all need to come to consensus. So doing one update call to the IC takes 2 seconds because it goes through all these nodes that then return back to you. And so what we thought was, okay, we'll have some off-chain components that require really fast latency to be run on AWS, and the rest of the game will be using blockchains, and the database will be stored on canisters. And in the process of doing this, we realized the game wasn't even a Web3 game. Even though we were leveraging NFTs and tokens and storing our data in database, it still felt like we were building the game how we always built it, traditionally. And what we're seeing now is in outside of the IC, like in the general Web3 gaming space, a lot of Web3 games are just going back to Web2 now. Like they're getting rid of all their NFTs and tokens, and they're giving up on Web3, and they're just going back to Web2. And the reason they are is because they started the game thinking it was going to be like a Web2 game. They had the mindset of, oh, we'll do what we did in the past. We'll use the playbook that was successful before to build a game. And what Phethora realized, about a year ago is that when you're building a fully on-chain game, you need to start thinking from first principles. So you really need to peel back all the biases and preconceptions that you have of building a game. And this is really hard for people who have played games their entire life. Like if you're a gamer, you think you know what a game is, right? I think for me, like I'm like, yeah, this is how a game should be. A game should have these game loops and have all these biases of what a fun game is. So peeling all that back took a lot of work for me, and thinking from, okay, if we were to invent a new type of game, a new game genre that had to be fully on chain, it had to fit inside these constraints, things like it has to have 2-second delay, but then as a result of that, all the data, all the logic is on chain and can be composable and extended. What kinds of new genres of games can we create? What are the new experiences that people can have that they couldn't have in a regular Web2 game? So really a year ago, when we had this epiphany that we're doing everything wrong at Phethora and we need to focus on building fully on-chain games. And so basically we scrapped everything off AWS. We got rid of all of our off-chain components, and we went pure, 100% on-chain. And that's when we started tackling all of these problems that basically Boom DAO has solved now, and all of the infrastructure that Phethora worked on during that time eventually shifted, and we realized that this infrastructure is going to be something that benefits everyone on the IC. All the game developers on the IC need this, and we really at Phethora we have this mindset that a rising tide lifts all boats. So the IC ecosystem is so small. And, it's really unfortunate when you see tribalism or division inside the ICP ecosystem, because it's such a small ecosystem and we really need to work together to see it succeed. If we're tearing each other down, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like there's not that many people here.
It will definitely make it more difficult for everyone else if we don't collaborate. I 100% agree.
Yeah. And when we realized this at Phethora, that's when we basically decided to create Boom DAO. And Boom DAO was the culmination of basically all this R&D that we did for getting Phethora to be fully on chain, and taking that to another level and figuring out, okay, we can make it fully on chain, but then how do we package all of this infrastructure so that it's easy for any developer to use and easy for any developer to plug in and immediately have a fully on chain game in a matter of days or weeks rather than taking a year to do it. So that was basically how Phethora transitioned, our infrastructure into Boom DAO and how Boom DAO was formed.
I remember like a while ago, I was playing the game with my brother. Such a fun game because there were the maps where you would race and then somebody would have a score that was way faster than anyone else. And we would have to figure, what did this guy do to get such a quicker score? And then like we would play for hours at a time trying to beat that score, and we found what we had to do, and then repetition. until we managed to do it. It's a super fun game, and the competitive aspect of it was really great.
I love that you really enjoyed it. Like we love building Phethora, and we're gonna actually continue. I'm really excited. We have some really cool updates coming to Phethora over the next few months that are going to be much more focused on what it can enable when it's fully on chain, and how we can encourage like content creation and third party developers to come in and build on top of it. But yeah, I mean Phethora was, it is an amazing game, and we had thousands of users who enjoyed it and played it.
It was really fun, and I believe one of the first games that you would be able to play on the internet computer. My question is, you mentioned the tools. How much easier is it to build your game entirely on the ICP blockchain using the tools versus without using the tools? So what's the difference?
Yeah, so that's the big question, and I mean, without the tools, it would take a year to build a fully on-chain game. You'd have to build the game client, which is already hard enough. That's building the graphics and the shaders and the gameplay, all those things that the player sees, right? But then you have to spend another 6 months building the back end, the game server, the database. So you have to do all this from scratch, right? Because no one's done this on the IC before. So you literally have to write your own database implementation for your game. You have to write all of the validation logic that validates all the movements and the actions that players do. So basically, all this needs to be done from scratch.
Yeah,
And then, of course, if you want to have NFTs and tokens, then that's also stuff that you have to build from scratch.
and the problem isn't only just having to build them, like time wise. You need to actually know what you want to do, and you need to figure it out first of all. So that's another problem, because nobody did it before. You can't just copy what somebody else did. You need to figure it out yourself, which I think adds another layer of difficulty to the whole process.
Yeah, definitely. And basically by leveraging the Boom DAO infrastructure and the tools that we've built, we've managed to take all these things that would probably take you a year to build from scratch, and you can deploy and configure everything, in an hour. Of course, if you want to build your game clients to have better graphics, to have better gameplay, all those things, that'll take more time. But that's something that game developers love. That's the thing that they want to focus on, right? Is the fun gameplay of your game. But all these things that the boring stuff can all be deployed, configured in a matter of 10 minutes.
And this is a big thing that people, maybe because they didn't know this, some of the community members were upset in the beginning. But hopefully, if I was able to understand it, I think everybody would be able to understand. You explained it in an as non-developer friendly way that I think there won't be somebody to not understand the importance of those tools. You mentioned having the whole game on the blockchain. What are the benefits of building your games on chain as opposed to just going the usual route of Amazon Web Services? So what are some of the benefits?
Yeah. So we touched on this a little while back when we were talking about the World Engine protocol. But basically, when you have AWS, I would say that there's two things that are issues. When you have your game server running on AWS, you can't really do an SNS because your credit card is attached to your AWS account, and if you stop paying the bills, the game stops working basically because the entire game server goes down. If Jeff Bezos wants to censor your game, he can turn off your game servers. There's so many issues. Like if people can hack your AWS account, then they could take down your game servers. And so really like the game server is probably the most important component in a game. And so having that be run off chain is really a major security issue. And it doesn't allow the SNS DAO to govern your game fully. So that's one thing specific to the internet computer. The second thing is when you have your game fully on chain, it enables new things. So like we mentioned before, the ability to have composable and interoperable interactions between games, the ability for players and developers to mod a game and extend it with new functionality. There's this concept that's been really blowing up in the Ethereum world right now, and it's this concept of autonomous worlds. And I really encourage you to dig into it and research this topic, because it has a lot of potential to be as revolutionary as NFTs. This concept of autonomous worlds is basically you can deploy a digital world fully on chain, and then that world exists permanently for the rest of eternity, and people can basically build on top of it, extend it, mod it, plug into it, and basically create this meta world on top of this base world. So you're just deploying like what you could think of as like the base layer world, right? And then all these other people who are enjoying your world are contributing to it. They're creating content on it. They're modding it, creating games inside of your game. They're creating worlds inside of your world. And basically this world just gets bigger and bigger, and it lasts forever. So there's never a time where, the game studio runs out of money and they're like, oh, sorry, we're shutting the game down. That'll never happen because the game is fully on chain. It's fully on the blockchain, and it'll exist for eternity. And so that's really what the vision, like the long-term vision of the World Engine protocol that Boom DAO has built, is basically enabling this vision of autonomous worlds on ICP.
It sounds really interesting. The idea of an autonomous game kind of sounds like a simulation. You start a simulation, and then people there decide what's going to happen inside this simulation. So cool.
It's a good way to describe it. I'll add on to that too, because I think these autonomous worlds are actually more similar to the real world than they are to a digital world. Because everything has actual value in an autonomous world. Because you're using crypto, so things actually have monetary value, and there's actual real consequences, right, for doing things in these worlds.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your upcoming SNS launch and the Boom token. First of all, what will be the utility of the Boom token besides voting on governance proposals?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think I wish we had been more clear about this. I think it's definitely like deep in our white paper, but it's something that I wish we had had talked about more. And basically with the World Engine protocol, we view it just like any other blockchain protocol, right? And so by aggregating network effects to this protocol, you can essentially create a value creating layer. And so an example would be as more and more games connect to the World Engine protocol, they require a token to interact with it, right? So in the same way that cycles are used to interact with the internet computer blockchain, and they're used to pay for computing costs and storage, in the same way the World Engine protocol has all this data that's being read by many games, it's being updated by many games. And so like if you wanted to interact with another world inside of the World Engine protocol, you might have to pay a certain number of tokens to interact with that. Or if you want to mod a game, so you want to take a game, import its data, and extend it, that transaction might cost a few tokens to do. And so basically by interacting with this protocol, you're creating essentially a value accrual layer that's basically the more people that connect to it, the more tokens get burnt, and that's how the tokenomics would work. But beyond that, even though that we believe that has the biggest opportunity long term for expanding and becoming something that's way beyond what we envision. In the short term, there's also what we're calling premium features. So there's going to be premium features for both game developers and for the players themselves inside of Boom DAO. And so premium features for developers include things like being able to deploy additional NFT canisters or token canisters, being able to create additional worlds beyond one or two, basically access to tools and infrastructure for power users, right? For people who are building enterprise level games, accessing technical support directly from the experts at Boom DAO. Like you can pay for being able to access exclusive channels to communicate with some of the engineers who have built a lot of these protocols and tools. So there'll be premium features for game developers, and then also for players. We're actually going to be creating what we're calling Boom DAO guilds. And so these are essentially massive guilds full of players for each game world that's created on the World Engine Protocol, and these guilds are going to be places where players can join together and create communities around a specific game. They can integrate directly with the World Engine Protocol, so anything that you do in a game, immediately that smart contract can communicate to the guild smart contract, and so it can be deeply integrated at a protocol level. And so you can have your achievements and stats and items in all the games that you played surfaced in your guild profile, and it's all being run from smart contracts, Canister communicating directly with each other. And you can pay for, if you wanted some sort of status or reputation, you want a cool badge, you want a cool avatar, in your guild. Those are all things that players can pay for as well with their Boom token.
Let's talk a little bit about the guilds. So, for example, you could have the same guild go and be the top one guild in any of the games inside the Boom DAO, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so guild we view it as a really cool way to also incentivize competition between guilds and communities in these games.
Super cool, because I would assume there will be many competitions in different games, especially on the internet computer, and then you find your good allies, form a Boom DAO guild, and go and win everything. That would be so cool.
Exactly. And I think there's a huge opportunity there with the communities on the IC are already really so strong and so deep. And I think leveraging that, I think people want to be able to take that into the games that they're playing. Um, and yeah, and I think finally the last thing I'll mention is that we really hope for the Boom token to also be integrated across all the games that are being connected to the World Engine Protocol, the game launcher, and so we can create this kind of cohesive ecosystem where if games want to, they can integrate the Boom token and have that used as a currency and a payment system inside the game.
That would be cool, and that would also take one more thing off of their head. They would not have to worry about developing their own token, which is also a cool thing. I went on the DFINITY forums, and one of the questions that I read there by one of the users was, what are the canisters that will be under the SNS control and governance?
There's 10 canisters, and they include basically the game launcher front end, all the backend canisters for the game launcher, things for deploying the world, the games, the NFTs, the ICRC tokens. Those are all separate deployer canisters. And then when it comes to the World Engine Protocol, that's when it gets more complex. So the World Engine Protocol, is composed of basically a central hub canister called the World Hub that basically indexes and tracks all the different database canisters. And so every user that interacts with the World Engine Protocol creates their own canister. And all those canisters, that there'll be thousands and thousands of them, will all be tracked essentially by this central hub. And all of that is governed, by the SNS. And then there's additional canisters in the World Engine Protocol that handle payments and staking. So that's also one of the things that comes integrated with all the Unity template and the worlds and all that are payments and staking systems. And so you can have payments and staking in your game from day one. And so those are also canisters that are handled by the SNS. And then also there's a few miscellaneous canisters, like there's a login web page canister for when you do Unity login. It has to communicate to a front end canister and to fully do that login. And I believe we also have a top up canister for topping up all the cycles in all of the other canisters.
What does the canister being under the SNS control and governance mean for somebody who's not aware of what a DAO or what SNS is?
Yeah. I mean, so this is, if you've never heard of this is an amazing feature of the Internet Computer Blockchain. It's not possible on any other blockchain. It's because all these contracts or all these canisters are fully on chain. They can be governed on chain by an on chain DAO. And so what the Internet Computer has already done, is core to the Internet Computer Protocol, is that there's this huge DAO that governs the protocol itself called the NNS, the Network Nervous System. And that basically governs, the entire protocol, all the code that's being run. And so now what they've done is basically create miniaturized versions of that for each DApp that does an SNS. And then SNS is basically like a miniature NNS. And those allow the DApp to be governed directly by by an on-chain DAO. And so people can vote on-chain for code upgrades, for changes to the dApp, and it directly gets pushed to the blockchain. Whereas on Ethereum or on other chains, you'll see that basically like changes to code have to happen through a middleman. So there could be a DAO, but in reality, whatever the DAO decides has to be approved by the developers because the developers push the changes live. What we've seen is that even like recently with Uniswap, they basically took down one of their front ends because they wanted to basically like censor a feature. I think there may have been a bug in it, so they basically took down one of their front ends so that no one could interact with the front end. And that's something that obviously like they claim to be this decentralized organization that's essentially a DAO, but in reality, it's just the developers can do whatever they want. And so what the internet computer enables is that it's truly decentralized and being voted by the community.
Let's talk about how the timeline would look after the Boom DAO SNS sale is over. What are some of the main things that you're looking to have in place by the end of 2023?
Our roadmap is pretty extensive, and I'll kind of dive into it now. But basically, immediately after SNS, we're going to be forming a hackathon. And so we're working closely with DFINITY, and DFINITY will be sponsoring a gaming hackathon that'll have a track specifically focused on leveraging the World Engine protocol. And so we really want to see, we're super excited to see what game developers, what experiments they think of, and what new innovative ways they're building on the World Engine protocol. And so we're super excited to get a new wave of fresh faces, building games on the IC and being able to build them, in a matter of days rather than months. And so that's something that'll happen most likely in September. And then a little further on, we have the formation of the Boom Game Makers Alliance. And this is basically this alliance of game developers and software engineers and game makers and thought leaders who are super focused and trying to make the IC gaming vertical succeed. And so this group of people will basically decide on what things are the most impactful for gaming on the IC, what things can help the most developers, can help the most gamers, and basically by unifying all of these people who are building games on the IC, we hope to create much better alignment on what people are building. And then further on, we have the creation of the Boom Gaming Guilds. And so that's basically the inaugural guild that'll be created and rewarded for their engagement across all the games in the Boom DAO universe. And then later on, I think around December, what I'm really excited about, this is actually my favorite thing, is that we're going to be doing WebSocket implementation for basically networking for on-chain games. So this is, if you're not technical, this might go over your head, but basically DFINITY has put together a prototype for allowing for WebSocket communication. And what that means is with WebSockets, you can send data to a smart contract and the smart contract can send data back. So it allows for two-way communication rather than just one-way communication, which is how it's being done right now.
Does this fix the problem of the huge lag in multiplayer games on the internet computer right now?
It's a complicated topic. It fixes it maybe like it fixes it visually. So there's lots of tricks that you can do in game development where you basically predict what's going to happen. You show that to the player immediately, but on the back end, it might take 2 seconds for it to actually be saved to the database. And so what this enables is that kind of functionality to happen for an on-chain game. Because currently, if there's a few games on the IC that are trying to build, like super fast twitch, low latency games, like first-person shooters or MOBAs, things like that. And right now you have to host your game server on AWS because there's no way to do that low latency without that. So what I was talking to the WebSocket team about just this past week, and we were getting really excited about this, was basically there might be a chance to run this kind of low latency real time connection through boundary nodes on the IC. And so that would remove the need to, use your credit card to run an AWS account and run everything on AWS. You could basically do real time communication through boundary nodes, which wouldn't go through consensus. And boundary nodes are spread out across the world, so you would connect to the boundary node that's closest to you, and so that would also allow for really fast ping. So it's something that definitely needs to be explored more, and it'll take a lot of work to get to where we want it to be. But it's something that's really, really exciting, and that would be directly integrated with WebSockets. So we'd have two ways of doing things. We'd have this real-time communication channel that doesn't go through consensus and takes 100 milliseconds to send a message from one player to another player. And then we would also have a consensus WebSocket layer that takes 2 seconds to send updates to the database and things like that. But basically, with these two things combined, you could build a truly multiplayer game fully on chain, no reliance on AWS or Google Cloud or anything else. And so that's basically what we're going to be focusing on to deliver this infrastructure for all game developers to use and leverage, by the end of this year.
Which is amazing, because I was talking to Amolad, and one of the main problems that they had was exactly this: the fact that they would have trouble building, like opening a multiplayer version of the game. And this sounds like it would fix this huge problem, which is great.
Yeah, it would definitely, like with a game where you basically just want to see your friends. Like, let's say you're playing Minecraft, you want to see your friends playing with you and like running around the map and doing funny things together. And basically for that to happen, like all the little positions of your friends need to be sent, every 100 milliseconds. And so by sending it through boundary nodes, it'll be possible to have that experience now.
The roadmap extends until the end of 2024, so it's a huge roadmap. I think the best way for people to get to know the roadmap is to actually go and look at it. It's all on your website. I see there will be a Boom grant program. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So this will also be, a huge initiative for us, is that we want to see people come together and work together to build things. And so obviously you need some sort of, process for how people, prioritize what needs to be worked on. How do you incentivize people to build? And then how do you, organize code reviews and making sure that people delivered on what they said they would build. And so basically all of this is part of our grant program. And it'll also be directly, working together with the Boom Game Makers Alliance. So the Boom Game Makers Alliance will identify, what things are needed for game developers on the IC to, take gaming to the next level. And then they'll work with the grant committee to figure out, which developers can build these things, who can achieve, these complex tools. And then, we'll be able to build a lot of tooling that we couldn't build, on our own. So that's really the goal of the grant program, is how do we, decentralize this building process.
Yeah, it really sounds very good, and I'm a little bit upset with the first reaction of the community, especially on the DFINITY Forum when you guys made the post, and there were a few community members that I am familiar with, and I'm sure they were not ill-intentioned. The problems were, if I remember correctly, first that the team is too new, and why are you launching an SNS if you're a new team? And the second one, that the tools are not complex enough. And hopefully, with this podcast, we managed to help people understand that the tools are not easy. Small tools are actually very important tools and hard to develop. And the team is one of the most experienced teams in the whole ICP ecosystem. So hopefully we managed to debunk that for the community.
Yeah, I really hope so too. And it's unfortunate because there's people in this ecosystem that really hate us for some reason, and they want to see us fail. And I'm not sure the reasons, but it's for us, it's really, we want to see the gaming vertical on the IC succeed. And we've been building for 2 years to achieve this goal. And for us, it's like, how can we make sure that everyone in this ecosystem is able to survive and grow and flourish, and what needs to be done to do that. And yeah, the regarding the tooling, I've even heard like things like the Unity template is really simple, and people have uploaded games to canisters for a long time now. And I think it glosses over all the other stuff that we built. I think yeah, like I uploaded a game to an asset canister 2.5 years ago. But that's not really the tooling that we built. That's for getting the World Engine protocol and the ICP.NET agent and all these other tools. So I really hope people understand the gravity of all these different things.
I think they will. And one other thing that I wanted to say is most of the projects that launched on SNS, and I'm not saying it to punch anyone here. So most of the projects that launched on SNS launched it to be able to fund themselves, and which is good, fund themselves. And if they will become successful companies, the investors will all benefit. What Boom DAO is trying to do is to make it easier for a whole sector of ICP, which is the gaming sector, to make the tools for everybody to use and to help other projects succeed, which I think is a good mission to have for you guys.
Yeah, and I think like it's a tough one to do because I think in crypto, you and I both know tribalism is rampant, right? Like everyone wants their project to succeed and everyone else's project to fail, and so it's for us it's up to us to basically gather everyone together, to work together and stop these practices of tearing each other down and thinking of the other person, like this other project, as the enemy. So how do we get these people to align together and actually work together to make the whole ecosystem better?
Yeah, no, that is so true. That is so true. Like everybody looks at everybody else as the enemy, but it shouldn't be like that. I think it's important because a big part of the ICP ecosystem are NFTs and the games that NFT communities are building right now. And to support somebody that would help develop those games, I think is a win-win for the whole community.
Yeah, definitely. I think like what we really need is some really hit games on the IC, some huge successes. And so for Boom DAO's goal is basically how can we enable this solo dev or this small game team to create the next Fortnite, to create this massive sensation on the IC and attract millions of players.
Are there any ICP games that are currently using the Boom DAO's infrastructure, and what are the plans to onboard like the remaining games into Boom DAO?
There's actually quite a few games that are already using Boom DAO. The Cubetopia, Bounty Rush, Icy Kitties, which is building Pause Arena, Inside Dark Studios, Unfold VR, Obsidian Tears, Cosmic Wraths, Cthulhu, IMOLAD, Icy Puppies. So they're all these games are basically using the Boom DAO game launcher, and have uploaded their games there. But what we really want to see is Boom DAO also or all these games also use Boom DAO's World Engine protocol. So that's really what we see as the biggest way that we can help these games build fully on-chain games. And so right now we have Cubetopia, who's integrating the World Engine protocol at a deep level with their pet quests. And so hopefully with some interactions between like Cubetopia and Phethora and a number of other games, we can start creating network effects for the World Engine protocol. And then we also have Bounty Rush, who is also going to be integrating the World Engine protocol. We have some developers who are currently experimenting, like with building like smaller games on the World Engine protocol, and these are more like solo devs. And so we have a line of games that are trying to figure out how can we build on top of the World Engine protocol, and how can we create network effects for the rest of the ecosystem.
It will have to be a team effort from like the whole gaming ecosystem on the internet computer, like to work together and to spread the word and to build together towards what will be a very bright future for the ICP gaming ecosystem. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. There's really no negative to working together and trying to build things together. And so we hope we can get all the games on the IC to work together and get aligned and building together.
For people that are building games but are not yet featured or using your game launcher, how can they get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, so the best place is in our Discord. So if you're a game developer, head to the Boom DAO Discord and go to the Game Devs channel. And this is where you can ask all your questions for troubleshooting, any technical questions, or even just, if you want to set up a call with me and the ICP Maximalists, we're happy to set up a call with you. Our calendar is open, and we've been meeting with game devs, for the past 2 weeks, that we've never, like we didn't even know they were building an ecosystem, and they reached out and set up calls with us, and we love connecting with them because, that way we can start, their gaming experience on the IC on a head start. They can start building a game much faster. So
yeah, I think we covered a lot in this podcast. Hopefully, people have had their questions answered through what we discussed today. Is there anything else that you would like to say to the listeners of this podcast or to the ICP community in general?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing I would say is that, Boom DAO, we really, want the gaming vertical on the IC to succeed. That's really our goal, is that if we can grow the gaming vertical and support it and build infrastructure for it, that'll benefit everyone in the ecosystem, and not even gaming projects. If we can create a successful game on the IC, that'll attract users to SocialFi, to DeFi, to all these other protocols and other sectors inside the IC. And as most people know, gaming is one of the the sectors with the biggest potential in Web3. And so we've worked closely with DFINITY to figure out, is there a way for us to build this gaming vertical on the IC and turn it into something that's much bigger than it is now. And so Boom DAO is basically the culmination of a lot of strategy and figuring out what exactly could take the IC to the next level and allow for this catalyst for games on the IC. So really hope that everyone understands that we're trying to get everyone together to push forward the gaming vertical and just try to benefit the whole ecosystem.
I think this is great. If anyone else has any questions for Boom DAO, they can find you guys in Discord. If you're a game developer and you want to use the tools also in the Discord, I think that's great. So Tommy, thank you very much for tuning in, taking your time and coming to the podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm definitely looking forward to see you guys keep going, and looking forward for the SNS launch in it's actually this month, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll be very soon. It's coming up very soon. And
awesome.
And thank you for having me on the podcast. You guys are kicking ass and doing a great job, creating content and making sure that everyone hears about the IC. And so keep doing what you're doing, and I appreciate you having me on.
That was quite a podcast. Hopefully this managed to answer most of your questions about Boom DAO. If you have further questions, you can ask them in the Phethora Discord. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to our channel to see more videos like this. My name is Alex, and I'll see you next time.